This is Six Tackles with Gus, with Matthew Thompson and Gus Gould.
Welcome to Six Tackles with Gus, coming to you from a very secret location this week in a special time slot of Friday morning to cover all the Origin and have a look at round 20. Phil Gould, we are in a bunker. No one will see us here.
Secret meetings are my specialty. They're my specialty. I have several secret meetings every day.
Are they the ones we see, or are there some that we don't get to see?
If I've been seen, it's because I've wanted you to be seen.
Yeah, too smart for that.
If it's secret, it's not in a cafe somewhere.
On the show today, we'll wrap up Origin 2023. The Blues too good at home on Wednesday night. The stars of tomorrow shine in the under-19s Origin matches, which you saw live and free on 9. Fabulous to have a look at the future of rep footy. Is Payne Haas set to become Rugby League's highest player? And we'll preview round 20 and get Gus's tips as well. Let's rip into yes, no.
Yes! No.
That's the rule.
No. Dear.
A lot to rip through on the podcast today, but I'll start with this one. Bradman Best and Keon Kaloa-Matangi, or Kaloa-Matanga, if you're Paul Vaughton, are long-term Origin players. Keon Kaloa-Matanga. That was, he's the best. Only Freddy could get away with that.
Yeah. Freddy can get away with a lot of things. He can get away with a lot of things. But anyway, we all knew who he was talking about.
Yes.
And
he went good, Keon.
Yeah, both very good players. I think Keon could develop into one of the all-time great front rowers in our game. I know he's playing on an edge at the moment, but he's got that bullocking, block-busting style. One of the front rowers in the competition I've got a big opinion of is Aden Fanua-Blake,
yes.
Both in personality and character in playing style, and I think Keon Kaloa-Matangi could easily end up as good as Aden Fanua. And he's a player that I was really pleased to see get a start in Game 3 in the Origin, and showed that his credentials. I'm quite sure he's going to be an Origin player for quite some time, and we need a lot more like him too. Bradman Best, well, he's been coming through the system for years and years and years. Not easy for a centre. It's sort of the position that can take some players a long time to master, and they get better with age over a longer period of time. And I think Bradman Best is going to be one of those players. He's a player that's always had setbacks with little injuries because he's always half pulling through tackles and people are always falling on his legs and he's always just being dragged down from behind, and he's had some other issues, reading defence and those sorts of things, but he's really maturing into the player that we all suspected was on the horizon all those years ago. I mean, he was a very dominant kid coming through age group football. Glad he too got a chance, because it was, if it had been a decider, I wonder whether they go that way. I wonder whether Keon and Bradman Best get a run in that game, but it was a good opportunity to get them blooded into the NRL, and the way that he combined with Cody Walker and Addo Carr to get Addo Carr away a couple of times for the first time in the series was quite special. And then, of course, his own bullocking efforts, not only at the scoring end of the field, but also at the back end of the field. I thought some of his charges coming out of trouble are really helpful, and you need those players that are willing to get in there and mix it in the middle of the field. And Bradman Best is a beast. He's a physical beast.
He is, isn't he?
He really is, and he's a determined young man, and he's not scared either. I mean, his first interview for the Origin was, "I hate Queensland," and he let them know it too. So, really happy for both those boys.
Yeah, so we got the Telstra tracker during our Origin coverage, and I saw some of the data coming out of that, which we've posted actually on our social media channels, NRL on 9. And one of the measurements is high intensity efforts.
Yep.
So Bradman Best had 40, and that was the top of the pops in the game.
That's what he is. He's extremely explosive. There are some players in the game that not pace their way, but they're sort of at the same pace the whole time, and their intensity doesn't change. But you've got these other players that are high intensity. When the ball comes in their direction or they get the ball in their hands, they're high intensity. Sometimes their football suffers because they don't do enough off the ball, right? They can become a bit distracted or a bit lazy or whatever off the ball. I'm not saying that's Bradman Best, but I'm just saying it's players within the game. And that means that sometimes they're late to their assignment, or they don't turn up at all, or they're not in the right place at the right time. People look at what happens when they're making a tackle and when they're having a run, but they don't see all the other times where they could have been there, should have been there, and weren't, or the number of opportunities that they missed because they weren't alert enough. And that's a part of learning the game and learning that, 95% of your football out there is actually played off the ball. It's without the ball in your hands or tackling the man with the ball. But that's the 95% that's going to determine whether or not you're a great player. I remember reading that in a Michael Jordan book, the great US basketballer, many, many years ago. And he talked about a game of basketball, and he said, I might only have the ball in my hands or defending the man with the ball for 5-6% of the game on data. But the other 94% is what made me a great player when I was without the ball, in my anticipation and my off the ball, my communication, my support for teammates, my other actions which help the team, and there's a whole thing that you can't get in stats, and that's why sometimes things like fantasy football and Supercoach and all these sort of things, and stats that we throw up in the 9 coverage, which were good for fans to see, who's running and how many metres. They don't necessarily lead to wins. That's not what leads to wins.
Are the best teams the best off ball teams?
100%. 100%.
Like unequivocally.
Unequivocally. Teams do their own stats. Coaches do their own stats. Some of them they rate things some higher than others. But the things that actually lead to wins have got nothing to do with runs and metres and tackle counts. They really don't. They really don't.
So
tackle counts, runs and metre counts don't interest NRL coaches.
So they've got a whole different sort of stats protocol that they would.
A whole different approach to how they view a player's performance.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's fine for fantasy leagues and all this sort of thing and Supercoach and all that. I get all that, and it's great for the fans to get engaged and all that sort of thing. But the stuff on that does not necessarily. It is a coincidence that might be a part of winning teams, or a great footballer might be able to do that too. But the great footballer's doing a hell of a lot more that's not picked up in stats and general stats that are shown through that. So it can be frustrating at times, and we're trying to educate the public and entertain the public at the same time in broadcasting and media and all that sort of thing. But there is a whole other game going on behind the scenes, out from the basic stats that you see in a game and what they've done, and that's where players need to learn about the actual what leads to winning football. The number of high intensity efforts, the number of off the ball movements, the number of kick chases, support plays. All being in position, it's.
How do we get hold of those stats? Is that like the Da Vinci Code or something?
Yeah, that's the stuff that makes the difference, mate. They don't give that out.
Question number 2: Cody Walker could play.
It also goes into recruitment and retention of talent.
Oh, right.
Too.
Secret meetings.
Eh?
Secret meetings.
No.
Do you take your stats to your meetings?
Just how you rate a player, or how you see his value to the team, and fans see it very, very differently to coaches. They see it very, very differently to coaches, and it's not. And the coaches don't want to come out and say why, because they don't really want to talk about it publicly. They don't really want to talk about or be negative on one of their own players publicly for different things. It's just, but it gets brought up in the wash sooner or later. Unless the player learns it and understands it.
Secret footy business. Cody Walker could play till he's 40.
Well, he's just in that beautiful phase of his career. I've spoken about this a couple of times since the game, and we talk about the great playmakers in the game. We talk about spine players, people that are there to create. They're there to create opportunities, and what we have in football is what they call shapes or plays. Decoy. They call them decoy runners. They're not decoy runners. Decoy runner is the worst term I've ever heard used. You'll hear them called all sorts of names, and it goes to why the bunker and referees don't understand obstruction, why the fans have been educated poorly on obstruction, what defence lines are taught to do and how they're taught to contend. And for young playmakers coming through the system, to be able to run certain plays and certain angles and use people around them to get themselves through the line, and how they tease the defence, taunt the defence, get the defence to react, are probably, for most of their career, premeditated. They'll practice and they'll run repetitions of training over and over and over and over again, and that's why all the teams look the same. They all run the same sort of plays: second man play, face ball, all their terms, cross play, all the type of angles and different things they run. But for the most part, as playmakers are coming through the system, they're pretty much premeditated. It's rehearsed over and over and over again to perfect what they're trying to do. All right, and then you'll get a special playmaker. You know, some of them do it when they're young, but most get it with age. And all our great playmakers over the last 20 years, you know, have been approaching 30 and beyond 30 before they get to this point in their career, is that they are not premeditated. They can actually go to the line with the same shapes and the same runners and the same angles, but they can be selective. They're more instinctive about watching how the defence reacts to it. You'll see young playmakers that can take the wrong option a hell of a lot of the time, or can't hit the right option, you know, with any high grade deal of success. Cody Walker is at the stage of his career where he can just get them to run. He can get everyone else to do the same thing, but he's got 3 or 4 different options every time he goes to the line. And that's what makes him so hard to contain. And when you consider it the other night, his first play was a grubber kick in behind the line, which was ruled a no try, but only because someone fumbled the ball. Right? He had Liam Martin pestering Daly Cherry Evans on the left all night. He created space for James Tedesco for the first time in the series. He created space and tries for Bradman Best, and he gave time for Bradman Best to get Addo Carr away on a couple of occasions down the left end. So he actually utilised everyone on that left edge. He brought Tedesco, he brought Liam Martin, he brought Bradman Best, and he brought Josh Addo Carr to life in that game because he's not premeditated. And I was sitting at ground level, and I got a really much better insight into it, because we sit high in the commentary box and fans sit up high. When I was at ground level, I could actually see the way he changes pace and changes tempo, and that's what taunts the opposition defence line. That's what makes them react. The idea to defence is, if you want a good defensive line, you need to keep your spacings equal and you need to move in the same direction at the same speed. That makes you very hard to breach. As long as your players are keeping their spacings right and they're moving in the same direction at the same speed, whether it's up and back or side to side or in or out or whatever it is, as long as everyone's moving together and they're all connected, defences are very hard to breach. The idea of running angles and planes and patterns and shapes is to make someone move faster or slower than someone else, or to someone to move out when someone moves in, or to drag someone in when he should go out, or to sit back and hang back because they're unsure, or to race up and panic. So what you're trying to do is to get them disconnected. And that won't necessarily mean that you're going to score on that play, but then once they're disconnected, what does that do to the next two play the balls, and how do you take advantage of that? So it's not just coming up with the play that's going to score the try. It's coming up with the play that's going to disconnect the defence and then get them into no panic mode, to get them into trying to defend the next two plays even though they can't get reset. They can't get their markers right, they can't get their spacings right, they can't get their numbers either side of the ruck right. And Cody Walker's in that beautiful part of his career where he is just terrorising everyone, because he can run the same play 5 or 6 times in a game with 5 or 6 different results. And then he can take advantage of what happens next. And he can now do it on both sides of the field. South Sydney are scoring just as many tries, if not more, on the right-hand side of the field to Cody's side on the left-hand side of the field. So he's matured to that beautiful age. And how old is he now?
33.
He's 33, and he's only just doing this.
Well, he was 26.
He's been doing he's been doing it for a couple of years, and that's why these conversations we had weeks ago, and I've said it to young halves coming through, and I try to say to them, you're not supposed to be doing that now. He wasn't doing that at that age. Cooper Cronk wasn't doing it at that age. Jonathan Thurston wasn't doing it at that age. Daly Cherry Evans wasn't doing it at that age. Look where they are now, and the age they are, and the experience they've got, and their game is so comfortable to them. They're so comfortable in their own skin because they've now mastered themselves. They've mastered the sense of timing, and they've mastered how to use other people and how to taunt defensive lines, and that takes an age. I don't think we put enough time into our young playmakers to explain that or to get them ready for that, and plenty fall out before they get the chance to actually learn it or execute it. You've got to keep them in the game longer. We've got to find a way to keep them in the game longer and keep educating them.
With respect to Origin, was it a mistake to not pick Walker in the first instance?
No, I don't think so. I don't think, if we go back, I think South got flogged a couple of times during Origin selection time. And I think there was an injury he had there at one stage.
Well, that was game 2.
Yeah, and Luai and Cleary have been the premiership winning halves for the last 2 years, so they were probably considered automatic for game 1. Cleary didn't play in game 2, and I thought Luai was one of our best. but it was just considered. And I know Brad personally was very, very close.
I think he may have been picked if he wasn't injured in game 2.
Maybe.
Cody, because the South
it might have been easier to do because Cleary was now out.
Yeah.
And so the attraction of Luai and Cleary together. And don't get me wrong, Jerome Luai is every bit as good as Cody Walker. Every bit as good as Cody Walker at the same age. Jerome's got a long way to go yet. A long way to go. All right, and you won't see the best of him or Cleary or some of these young halfbacks for another 4 or 5 years, which is a scary thought given what they're doing now. So, Cody Walker at Jerome Luai's age wasn't doing what he's doing now. Didn't have the master of the game that he has now. What Jerome Luai and Cleary and these fellas are doing at their age is extraordinary. It really is. How old's Munster? Munster's approaching 30. Jerome Hughes must be getting up towards that level there. So your best player, Sean Johnson. Sean Johnson...
He's 32.
Yeah, 32, but look at the seasons he's having with the Warriors now, now that he's settled back into his rhythm. And we talked about it a few weeks ago. Benji Marshall, what the different sort of player he was in his 30s compared to his early 20s and teen years, So anyway, Cody Walker, well, he won't play till he's 40 because no one can. Father Time is undefeated.
But
Father Time is undefeated.
But he's got a few big years left.
He beats the best of them.
He's got a few significant years.
Judging by what happened the other night, he's certainly got a couple more.
All right.
Sure. And that was his motivation, that this wasn't a one-off. The Bradman Best and the Kalama Tungis were debut players looking towards the future. Cody Walker didn't want this to be a swan song.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was his personal motivation. That's why it's not a dead rubber. That's what I said. Do you think it won't be important to him? Of course it'll be important to him. James Tedesco was able to produce one better than he's produced at any time of club or Origin this year. And I think Cody Walker helped that. So I think it's a healthy situation there. And I think Cody's certainly stamped himself as saying, well, that's not a one-off. I can do this again.
All right, a question on two of the absolute stars for Queensland. The Hammer's the best centre in the game now.
No. He's not the best. He's a good one. He's an absolute good one. I still think he's a fullback, but he's very, very good what he did in this series. And
he was outstanding.
Full credit to Billy Slater because he's left a bloke like Dane Gagai out, who's an experienced and high-performing Origin player and has been for a long, long time. And I know that was one of Billy's toughest decisions, but he went with the speed and the absolute frightening try-scoring ability of Hamiso, who scored another brilliant try again in Game 3. And he's a thorn in everyone's side. And, under Wayne Bennett, he's getting great tutelage up there, and he was unwanted at the Cowboys. He's landed at the Dolphins with the great Wayne Bennett.
Was he really unwanted at the Cowboys?
Well, I don't know. He went.
Gee. I think the lure of playing fullback at the Dolphins was...
Well, they obviously chose Drinkwater over the top of him.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Wow.
So unwanted's probably preferred.
Yes.
They preferred the other fella to Hamiso's style of football.
You remember watching Usain Bolt? Now, I'm not saying he's not comparing him for speed, but Usain Bolt, when he broke all those world records, looked like he was only going half rat power. The Hammer, when he kicked ahead and went past Brian Totler the other night, it looked like he was just loping. Like he burnt him.
Yeah, it's when they get in their stride.
It's frightening.
We got a brilliant new sprint coach speed coach at the Bulldogs, who's been around a few clubs. He's been at the Roosters and Manly and everything over the years. He worked very closely with Tom Trebojevic during his hamstring periods a couple of years ago and got him right. And when he talks about speed and speed development and identifies players with the ability to improve their speed or players that are just naturally gifted with speed, but how their mechanics can be improved. It's marvellous listening to them. Roger Fabry was another one I used to send kids to when they were younger, and his academy used to come out to Penrith and work with our junior rep players. And I think every junior footballer in their teen years should be going through professional sprint coaching just to learn the proper mechanics of running, because they can improve you out of sight in a short space of time with nothing more than your own gifts, but just being able to use them properly and be able to use your body mechanics properly. And every time you get a player that comes through though, like I remember Greg Inglis when he first came on the scene, and obviously Addo Carr is a brilliant speedster, but Hamaso's got that. It doesn't look like they're doing much.
It doesn't look like he's going. It looks like he could go another 3 gears faster.
Yeah, well, and he's probably like a push bike. He's never been flat out. I don't know how fast a push bike can go. We just can't get a human fast enough to keep it going.
Depends if it's got a electric engine attached to it.
Yeah, but a push bike can go as fast as you can pedal it, and your body can go as fast as you can pedal it. And how you pedal it, and how connected you stay to the ground or off the ground, or how you explode from the mechanics and what your stride length should be compared to what some kids do, and turning your legs. It's a science in itself. And when you listen to people that are skilled at this and understand it, they can improve it. Now Hamaso is a brilliantly balanced runner.
Amazing.
He really is, and his ability to change, his ability to swerve and change direction and seemingly effortlessly change pace. And I think that's what fools a lot of defenders. You kind of think he's going flat out, but he's not. He's got the ability to change pace simply with his stride length or his the speed of the way he turns his legs over, and it looks graceful because the rest of his body is so relaxed.
Yeah, it's amazing.
There's a saying they have: run fast, not hard. You see people trying to run hard, and they're gritting their teeth and they're clenching their fists and they're pumping their arms and they're trying to do it. They're actually working against themselves. The really relaxed runners are so fluid. It's just such a natural movement.
Michael Johnson was like that.
Yeah, it's just such a natural movement. You don't see it, and particularly early in it, that 0 to 15 metres, which is our game. That's our game. That's where you've got to be fast. 0 to 15 metres. You might have to go up, back and change direction in that 15 metres. You might have to stop, start, go again. You might have to start and veer out, veer left, veer right. That 0 to 15 metres is the rugby league. That's for front rowers, fullbacks, wingers, anyone else. You get the ball with very little space. All right. You see the really graceful runners when they get to run 30, 40, 50, 80 metres and do it like the way they do, or chase kicks, or... it's a long answer to a simple question.
You're on fire today.
Yeah.
Jeez, we're still in yes/no.
Yeah, I know.
This is good stuff from you.
Yeah.
Because
I don't really want to talk about the rest of it. You got.
Yes, there's always something going on. Last one from the.
You got 2 more here.
Yeah, I've crossed the bottom one.
Well, no, don't. Come on.
Oh, okay. You want me to keep it
in?
Yeah. The toiling, unfashionable Reuben Cotter wouldn't even have been picked for New South Wales.
How do I answer that? Yes! I think that's a true statement. That's why I'm saying yes. I think that's a true statement. And
New South Wales don't pick players like that.
There has been many examples of this over the years. Many examples of this over the years. And the names escape me because I'm losing my mind.
Dallas Johnson?
Well, plenty. There's been plenty of examples over the years where people have raised their eyebrows at the fella they've brought into Queensland, but I've known exactly what they're looking at. I've known exactly what they've done. And in the teams that I picked and coached, I tried to emulate that. I tried to understand what the Queensland mentality was. And I think a lot of the times rep teams, or particularly New South Wales teams, are picked through what they think fans will favour, or what media are pushing, or what agendas are being driven, and who's leading Supercoach points, and
they do.
They do, and it's. I've known players to come in with their Supercoach ratings.
I know. One in particular
to negotiate their contracts. No, Tiger, that's not going to cut it. Anyway. So there have definitely been, but that's what coaches value. They value certain attributes. Now, I don't think ever in my imagination, and Reuben Cotter earlier in his career was a hooker. A hooker.
That's right.
Maybe a lock forward, during the course of a game or what have you. And I can remember clubs, he had 3 ACL injuries. I mean, he had a terrible run with injuries.
He did too.
Early in his career, so he was kind of spinning his wheels. And how he developed, how his career morphed into this high energy, high impact, absolute fearless, terrorising the opposition with leg speed. And now everyone's saying, I want a Reuben Cotter. Everyone's now looking out for a small, fast-legged front rower that can come on and chew up metres and impact with his tackles and make up ground out of marker and put pressure on kickers and all these sort of things that Reuben Cotter does. The coaches value. They value so much in the course of a game, and particularly Origin. When you hear Queenslanders talk about Origin, you hear Billy Slater and Cameron Smith and Jonathan Thurston. Never do they talk about talent. They talk about effort areas in the game. The things that are actually going to help your team, the things that PNs don't see, the things you don't pick up in stats, the things that media don't see, and the things that teammates do see, the things that coaches do see. And Reuben Cotter is all of those things. I don't think Reuben Cotter would have been picked as a New South Wales player.
Oh, yeah, I don't think so either.
Maybe over time he'd have worn them down. And then once he got his chance in Origin, he'd have kept his spot. But there have been a number of players, I won't say like Reuben Cotter because he's an outlier, but...
Well, I can think of one, but Alan Tongue.
Yeah.
Now, he wasn't a breakout talent, but if he was a Queenslander, he'd played 20 Origins.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. I think our closest one was probably a Paul Gallen earlier in his career, where he was a shorter front rower and he played 80 minutes in the front row back earlier in his career. And there was a time there when New South Wales experimented with back rowers playing in the front row because they were more mobile, because the Queensland halves were so dynamic, because the pace of the game got to the big men. And this was particularly back in a time when we went from 5 metre rule to 10 metre rule, then we went to faster play the balls, and then we went to stupidly ridiculous speed of play the ball, and referees and rucks were, don't start me on all that, but it was manipulating the type of player that you were picking at Origin, and fans would say, why are they picking him? Why are they picking him? Because he can do the work, the other bloke can't. He can do the work that we need to be done, otherwise we're going to be exposed, and they're sorts of things. But Reuben Cotter, phenomenal, and he's changing the way everyone or coaches are looking at players that they're bringing through and what they need in the balance of their pack, and some things that can actually give you a little bit of an edge. And Reuben Cotter, not only just to play Origin in that position, but Player of the Series.
Wally Lewis medal winner.
The Wally Lewis
incredible.
medal. It's an incredible story. Now, I don't think there are too many Reuben Cotters around. You might go looking for it, but not be able to find it. You might never find another Reuben Cotter. He might be an outlier, but it gives hope to every young bloke in the game where coaches are looking at him at 19, 20, 21 years of age and saying, I just don't think he's big enough. I don't think he's big enough. He's not fluent enough out of dummy half as a hooker, or he's not really busting the line as a lock forward, or he's not really big enough. He can't affect the tackles, or when he tackles them, he tackles low, or he lets them get an offload, or But then when you look at the other things that they do, Reuben Cotter he's an outlier at the moment, but everyone's looking for another one because it's influence. The boy who plays for the Panthers, Moses Leota.
Oh, sorry. Wait.
Moses Leota. Mitch Kenny's another one who.
He's been doing a bit of Reuben Cotter work.
He's doing a little bit of Reuben Cotter work. But Moses
McInnes?
Leota, Cameron McInnes, who I'm sure they bought him as a hooker.
Yeah.
He was playing hooker at the Dragons.
He played at Souths as a hooker and then went to the Dragons.
Yeah, then went to the Dragons, and then I'm sure Cronulla bought him as a hooker, but they had young Brayley. But it's morphed into this role that he has now, high energy, high impact off the bench, and he's another typical example. I mean, you could
have picked him in the Origin.
You could throw him into an Origin game, and you'd be really glad he's there.
Yeah, 100%.
And then you'll find out you can't do without him.
Yeah.
Because it's so hard for them big men to keep going. There is a place for the big man. There is no risk about it. But there are times in these games where the big man becomes a liability, and I don't care who they are. They can be the greatest big man of all time. That's why we have interchange. That's why coaches push for interchange, because the big man can't keep going at the pace of the game that we designed. The 10-metre rule and the referees and the faster play the balls and the changes in rules and 6 agains and all that sort of thing. The big man is kept in the game through interchange. But they've got to be protected by other people who are purely out there to do all these other things that we're looking for. And Reuben Cotter is, everyone's now looking for those types of examples. And it's not easy to do. They can do it. They can do it for 5 or 10 minutes. They certainly can't do it for an hour and a half like he does.
I'm surprised McInnes hasn't played Origin.
Well,
but there's another example. Queensland would have picked him.
If he was a Queenslander, he'd have been picked by now.
Yeah. Yeah.
No risk in the world. No risk in the world. He would have been picked if he was a Queenslander.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't think there's any risk about that.
Could you talk a little bit about the importance of Jake Trbojevic in that Origin environment? Because I was trying to, while calling the game, trying to keep an eye. Everyone talks about the great work he does in the middle of the field. Well, he runs the ball, and I mean, let's be honest, he's not going to bruise too many Origin blokes.
Well, I'll give you a
stat.
I'll give you a stat. He's broken one tackle in 3 years.
Is that right?
Yeah.
But that's not his value, is it?
He has less tackle breaks than any forward in the game.
So what's his value?
His value is his leadership, his reliability, his tackle technique, and I would imagine, I'm not out there on the field with him, but his communication, the confidence that he gives other people, and that we don't have to worry about that role while he's on the field, right? So that's why Jake Trbojevic is a favourite with coaches, what have you. He's also got, he doesn't use it in Origin as much, particularly when Tom's not playing, but he's also got the ability to play that Asaya Yeo, Cameron Murray type role with ball playing at club level. He hasn't had to do it too much at Origin level. But Jake Trbojevic is a one-on-one hitter. He's a reliable market defender. He's efficient in what he does. He churns through the work. Like he doesn't make the meters of it. And this is why runs and run meters are not the be-all and end-all. All right, and he hasn't broken a tackle for over 3 years. He scored a try.
He knows that.
He scored a try for Manly. Was it this year or last year? He scored a try, and I think he ran over a very tired small defender at the back end of the game.
That's his broken tackle.
That's his broken tackle for the last. Hasn't broken a tackle in 3 years.
Yeah.
And if you look at his average gain per run, it'd be less than 8 or 9. I'm only looking at what I think I know, but it's nowhere. When you're talking Payne Haas's and Regan Campbell-Gillards and those sort of players, there's not that visible high impact intensity, charging it back from kickoffs and charging it up from taps and hitting the ball up 15 times for 130 metres, 140 metres. Jake doesn't do that.
Which is why the uninitiated eye would wonder why he's so important.
Yeah. But when he's there, everyone else feels better. Everyone else feels better. And he's there. He would be given a specific role on specific players in their team to make sure that, and what he doesn't make in his own meters, he stops in their meters.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's, that's where he makes up the difference. And that's what I mean about stats and the stats that we churn out and how we compare that and try to relate that to being a good footballer or a team contributor as against what's really important to coaches and players. And, Reuben Cotter's an outlier at the moment. There's not too many like him. But you're right, Cameron McInnes would be playing for Queensland or would have played for Queensland at some stage in his career, given what he provides. Another player like that, I think Dale Finucane would have played a lot more Origin football than what he did earlier in his career. He's getting to the back end of it now, but there have been any number of players over the years. I was just talking about Moses Leota at Panthers. They talk a hell of a lot about James Fisher-Harris and Asaya Yeo and Liam Martin and Kickow when he was there and that sort of thing. They were a brilliant young packer, but they'll all tell you the one they loved playing with is Moses Leota.
No, he's relentless. And
he's getting better and better as the years go by because he's so reliable.
Why then the New South... I think what we've said, what you've talked about with McInnes, etc., I think people that follow the game would understand that there's a different selection philosophy between the states. Why don't New South Wales pick blokes like that? Why don't they change their philosophy? If people talk about Queensland getting Origin, as you talk about, or they get Origin, why don't New South Wales change their thinking about it?
I remember taking a fellow called Luke Ricketson into Origin when I was coaching, right? And I picked Luke Ricketson, and everyone said, "Why the hell are you picking Luke Ricketson? Why is Luke Ricketson? Why he's not an Origin player? He's not this. He's not that. He's not this." And blah 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 blah. And my reply was, I can't ever imagine picking another team in my life without Luke Ricketson being in it.
There you go.
That's Luke Ricketson was my comfort blanket.
And he had an illustrious Origin career.
Well, they all, and I remember the great Andrew Johns, right, raised his eyebrows at me, and within 2 games come back to me and said, "What a great player Luke Ricketson is." I said, "Isn't he?" He said, "Yeah." And once they get to play with them, they understand what they are. So I think there's been any number of examples over the. I tried to find those types of players.
Brad Mackay.
Brad Mackay back. Oh, that's a long time ago, but
It was a long time ago.
It was one of the first team talks I ever gave any New South Wales team whatsoever. And I think I've told this story about the first New South Wales team that I ever coached, and getting them all in. Because I was very unimpressed with the first couple of days training and the attitude and the body language and everything else that they were doing. And when I first started, Queensland had a daunting record in Origin, and we just didn't get the concept. We just didn't understand the football that needed to be played. And I sat them all down and said, look, we're going to lose just like every other team before us unless we come to terms with something. I said, so what you tell me what wins games of football. And we wrote it all up on the board. And then I said, now you tell me what we want from fullbacks, what we want from our wingers, what we want from our forwards, and blah, blah, blah. And when we went through the job descriptions of what we wanted people to do, I looked at it and I looked at them and said, there you go, we've picked the wrong team. I said, none of you blokes can do this. None of you blokes do this for your club. There are blokes that do it for your club that help you be star players, and you're the ones that get the man of the matches, and you're the ones that the media write up. But you're not famous for this stuff. And this is the stuff we're going to need to win if we want to win Origins. So you need to step out of your comfort zone. And to a man, they all stood up and did it, and they were the first New South Wales side to ever win 3 series in a row. They had talent, but they had to learn what was important for Origin. And you go back and ask and speak about any of those fellas, and it was a turning point for us in understanding what the game really meant. And that's why a lot of them blokes, your Laurie Dailies and your Ricky Stewarts and your Brad Fittlers and all the people, have all wanted to come back and contribute to Origin after that and understand what it is. Many, many talented players have played Origin but not lasted until they understand what Origin really is. And many great Queensland teams are underestimated when they're actually great Origin sides.
Yeah.
They've been underestimated for that reason, because it's not the flash, it's the fire that you're looking for.
1995.
100%.
Bunch of Nevilles.
100%. Well, they weren't Nevilles. That's the thing. They weren't. They weren't Nevilles.
Well,
they were,
on the face of it, they were, but they weren't.
Well, that was media and fan speculation, But when you go back, they actually all ended up really good players.
They did. Yeah.
That's just where it was, and that was a great lesson for everyone. It was a great lesson for New South Wales, and it was a great lesson for Queensland, because everyone thought because they weren't playing the Super League players that they didn't have stand a chance, but they found real Origin resolve and real Origin, and New South Wales didn't have it.
When they picked that team, when you were coaching New South Wales, did you think they were a chance?
Yeah, absolutely.
You did?
I was worried.
Were you?
Yeah, if they got it right, I was worried. Yeah, because
you worried about the mastermind coach they had?
Freddy. Well, he understood Origin. He knew what it was. Freddy was one of those blokes.
I know. Yeah.
Freddy
he was actually the perfect coach for him, wasn't he?
Yeah, Freddy, by his own admission, wasn't the most flamboyant or talented player. Freddy was a work rate player.
Yeah.
When he was young, he could run a bit, but Freddy was a high energy work rate player.
Yeah.
With and he was a small bloke. Like, Freddy's not a big man.
He's not a big man. No.
And you look at all those Origin games and everything that they played at that time. Yeah. Fatty was all heart,
absolutely,
and energy and passion and love for the jersey and all those sort of things, which he instilled in them very, very quickly. And it was a great. I'm so glad that I was a part of that series. I coached in 8 series. I lost 1.
Yeah,
it was that series, and it's the one everyone wants to talk about. and I'm glad for it. I'm happy I went through it because it was a lesson to me, and it was a lesson to our players. We came back the next year and won 3-0, but no one ever talks about that.
But you did it because you'd learnt the lesson the year before.
Well, we always knew the lesson. We just didn't implement it right in that time, and there were a lot of distractions for us. But I've never ever taken anything away from what Freddy did for those kids, and a lot of those went on to have wonderful careers, like your Robbie O'Davises and Jason Smiths and
Adrian Lamb,
Matt Sings, and all those sort of fellas. And I remember going in. They beat us in Melbourne to wrap up the series 2-0, and I remember going into their dressing room to congratulate them. I said, "Now don't blow it in game 3. Don't waste what you've done." I said, we're coming to get you. I said, but don't, because a lot of those blokes I'd signed up to the ARL. That was in the Super League War.
Of course,
and I was coaching Matty Singh. I was coaching Adrian Lamb at Roosters. I said, don't, we'll come after you again in game 3, but don't you lay down. Don't you, waste what you've done here and spoil what you've done. And they didn't. They beat us in game 3 in Brisbane. I thought it was a wonderful series for the game, and it was poignant because we'll talk about that one day.
Well, do you know what? So that's. Is it 28 years ago? Yeah,
28 years ago.
We have to make a doco about that series. It's 30 years.
Just don't interview Fatty if you do it, because
how are we not going to interview Fatty?
Through the passage of time, he exaggerates the stories. But It was a wonderful time. I went to him at the end of the. I went to the end of the series. I said, mate, that's one of the greatest coaching performances I've ever seen. I said, you'd be congratulated. I said, it was brilliant.
I know he still talks about you saying that.
Yeah, I said it was absolutely brilliant. I loved it. I thought it was wonderful. As I say, I coached 8 series. I lost 1. I drew 1 with Wayne Bennett, and the other 6 we won. Mm-hmm. But that's the one that people want to talk about, and I'm happy to talk about it because it was the epitome of what Origin is and the things you're talking about. You know, picking a Rueben Cotter or picking a Cameron McGuinness or picking a Dallas Johnson and these sort of players. That you want the fire, you don't want the flash. And it comes into stats and how we rate players and how we value players and how we value team contributors. And it comes into so many facets of our game and how coaches are misunderstood by fans and selections are misunderstood. And if you allow the media and the fans to pick your team, particularly your rep teams, if you allow the media to pick it for you, I know where you'll finish up. I've seen it time and time and time again. Time and time and time again.
Jeez, for a bloke who doesn't like talking about Origin, you've come up with some gold here. Do you want me to ask you the last one?
Yeah, go on.
Billy Slater could command an NRL coaching gig tomorrow. He's super impressive.
He is, but we need him here at Channel 9. Queensland need him doing what he's doing. He's got the 2 best jobs in the business, and my recommendation to Billy Slater is that he doesn't need to be an NRL coach. He's got a wonderful life, and he still has to have time with his young family. He likes to breed horses and have his farm down there in Melbourne. He's living the life of Riley. He's got 2 of the best jobs that our game could ever gift anyone, as being an Origin coach and working here at Channel 9.
But you're forgetting something.
What?
He's a competitor.
Well, he gets his competitive juices. You know, maybe down the track, but he doesn't need it right now. He doesn't. He's you know, you've seen him here. He's just as meticulous in his preparation here for Channel 9 and what he does here.
He's fabulous.
As he was as a footballer. You know, what he learnt from being a professional footballer and the way he prepared for games. And they're all cut with the same rug. I mean, Cameron Smith and Jonathan Thurston, we're so lucky to have them here, and even Freddy and Darren Lockyer and Andrew John. We've got the greatest players of all time on the Channel 9 team here, and they do a wonderful job, and it's a great insight into the game.
We've got the best front rower in the game, Millie Boyle.
Well, the women's game too is only getting bigger, isn't it? Saw that game last night, the under-19s Origin game, and we called that on Gem last night. And if you get a chance, go and watch it because you're seeing the future there. The under-19s men's teams playing.
I'll ask you about those.
Anyway, but Billy Slater could get an NRL coaching job tomorrow, but he would have to dedicate himself to that, which he would, which means he's got to let everything else in his life go.
Yeah. Everything
else has got to go. Queensland's got to go. Channel 9's got to go.
Wife, kids.
Breeding horses has got to go. Wife, kids have got
gone.
Trust me. Trust me. That's what it is. Trust me.
See your family.
There's a famous story about one of the great NFL coaches who's sitting there, and he'd been coaching for 30 years, you know, in the NFL. One of you, who was it? Might have been the bloke at Dallas. Anyway. And he was sitting there during a team meeting, and they were watching the coverage of the game the night before, and they were going and reviewing the game and all that sort of thing. And he said, "Freeze that there." And he looked at himself. They had the vision of him on the sideline, and behind him was his son. His son was standing behind the coach. And he looked at it, he said, "My God, my son's grown up." True. And what a thing to realise.
On the TV coverage.
That you have been so obsessed with your career, you haven't noticed how big your boy's got. Yeah. And that's what it is. They're the sacrifices that these people make. They don't understand it. They really don't understand it. The media don't understand what they're doing, you know, when they're targeting people in sports and when they're targeting people even in the media and what they do. It's the extended families are the ones that hurt most. Not the people that you're targeting.
When's the last time you spoke to your kids?
Eh?
When's the last time you spoke to your kids?
They won't talk to me. They won't talk to me. They won't talk to me. I've been pretty lucky that way. But it's an all-on sacrifice. It's part of what beats them too in the end. You know, some of the ones for the uninitiated. A, the time commitment and the effort that it takes, and B, what it affects the rest of your life. It really does, and to keep balance and to know that you've got to have balance and be able to delegate and to have balance in your life. And it's, you know, like I've had young players sit with me and, you know, things aren't going well, and I've had, you know, they'll sit there and they'll start to shed a tear and say, "This is my life," and I'd say, "Well, stop there. It's not your life. right? It's a part of your life at the moment. Feels like a big part of your life right at the moment, but it's not your life. And even when this is over, you've got another 50 or 60 years to live. All right? This is a part of your life. It's not your life. So we need to stop that straight away. Because if that's what's giving you performance anxiety or giving you concerns about your future or worrying about contracts and worrying about money, it's not your life. And if you don't get what you dreamed of, it's not a failure. If you're giving your best and doing what you're best, and they're the conversations I'm having with kids all the time. And there are kids that, they're the hardest conversations to have. With the ones that have given 100% of themselves and try so hard, but they're just not good enough. That's 99. That's 99% of us.
That would be a hard conversation.
That's a hard conversation, mate. You got to go and get a job. I can get you $1,500 a game playing park football or A grade or in the country, and go and get that plumbing degree and go and get that.
Sorry, how much you go?
You get $1,500.
I'm available.
I feel like getting fit myself. you go out in the country towns now. You get $1,500 a game playing.
That's it.
Yeah, 100%. And you should be able to do that. We've got to keep country football alive and
absolutely.
And that level of the game alive. But it's not your life. That's the thing it's not your life. You've got to compartmentalise that. You've got to be able to push that to one side and still live your life and still have your life. And that's really difficult for people to do. Like I see the stress it has on people, all right? And particularly in this high profile part, where you've got Origins and NRL, the stress that it puts on people and puts on families is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. And it's the stress that your family's under that puts the stress on the person, not the criticism or the critiquing or the criticising that comes from the media or the targeting and the agenda-driven rubbish. It's the families that it hurts, and that's what affects the individual. So how do they get onto that?
I don't know.
Billy Slater, he could get an NRL coaching gig tomorrow. Someone pick him up. He'd give it 100%. He'd be very successful at it. But Billy, you've got the two best jobs in the country at the moment. You're coaching Queensland. You're working with Channel 9. I wouldn't be giving either of those up.
Should Freddy go on?
I said that to Sterlo 30 years ago.
Yeah, I know. Illawarra wanted him to coach.
Yeah.
The Steelers.
Yeah. He asked me one time. He said, what do you think? I said, what, you? And he said, yeah. I said, could you do it? Yeah. Should you do it? No. He said, well, I said, you've got the best job in Australia. I said, you can sit here and coach all 16 teams every week.
Yeah, but it's the Steelers. Imagine coaching the Steelers next to the Wollongong Ocean.
How did that end up?
You get to coach Ryan Girdler and
how did that end up?
Brett Rodwell and Rod Wishart.
Yeah, I think Sterlo had a wonderful career doing what he was doing.
Should Freddy go on?
Yeah, absolutely. He's the man for the job. He's the man for the job. And there's none better. I don't care who they throw up. There's none better at this time. Brad Fittler can reassess the people that work with him and how they go about their business and how they select their teams. There's always things to learn. When you boil this series down, the last 10 minutes or probably the first 10 minutes and the last 10 minutes in Adelaide decided the series. Game 2 came at a bad time. What happened in Game 2 can happen to you sometimes, and it's out of your control. Tom Trbojevic goes down in the first minute. They replace him with Damien Cook in the centres. That lost you 2 positions in the one game. You saw the differences with the other night. In hindsight, maybe they should have started with Damien Cook and kept the other boy on the bench. But they're decisions you make at times. But it's a 3-game series. You can have one where you lose it or you've got no control over what happens. And it just came at a bad time. They won down in the series. New South Wales lost this series. And I said it here. I said it publicly everywhere. Whoever wins in Adelaide will win the series. I said New South Wales cannot lose Game 1 and win the series. Right? They just can't. And that's the way it turned out. But they lost Game 1 because they lost the first 10 minutes and they lost the last 10 minutes. The rest of the game, they were actually pretty dominant. And they learned a lot out of those 2 periods. And, New South Wales keeps giving away their home ground advantage too. If we got 2 games in Sydney, I don't think Queensland's beaten us in anything.
Can I just make a comment? And you could, maybe there needs to be a bit more clear-headedness around selection. Is that a reasonable comment?
Well, selection's not easy. Selection's not easy, and I don't know what the selection process is. I don't know who does the selections. In the old days we had selectors, but then the head coach had to do it, then the head coaches and advisors. And Brad Fittler's not an NRL coach. He's not in and around coaching all the time. I noticed they had Ivan Cleary in the box.
Well, that might be the way forward.
Well, I said on 100% of footy the other night, I said, one tweak that I think Brad Fittler should consider is to have a current NRL coach on his staff, even if it's only an advisor, right? Because, and I relate it to the time when I coached Origin. I coached Origin for 5 years when I was coaching club teams. I was coaching Panthers and Roosters at that time and coaching Origin as well. And then the next time I came back, even though I was the director of coaching at the Roosters, I coached Origin not as a club coach. I was a director of coaching, not a club coach. I found
you were still involved in the club environment.
I was still in club, which helped. You know, I can't imagine not being a club coach or being involved in a club in some way, and then being thrown these 3 games in the middle of the year, like they're being asked to do.
Yeah.
And with all good intention and all the people that he's got in and around there, your Danny Badirases and your Greg Alexanders and all these great people that are great Origin players and great, you've still got to have some connection with what these players are doing, training, talking about in clubland, in club football, and in week in, week out. The language that they use, the structures that they run, the defensive communication that they have.
Yeah.
It took New South Wales 3 games to get their defensive creativity right, get their defensive connection right.
Yes.
They defended much better in game 3 than they did in the first 2 games. That's where they lost it. Their defence wasn't good enough in the first 2 games. It wasn't scoring. Their defence wasn't good enough in the first 2 games because they didn't have that connectivity there. They got it right by game 3. Now, I don't know what Ivan's role was leading into it, but I said on 100% footy last week, I said, one thing I would advise going forward is that they get a current day coach or someone who's coached NRL recently in with them.
Well, they do even Paul McGregor.
Even if it's just as a sounding board, you know. And I don't know what role Paul played. As I say, I don't know what goes on in there, and I don't know what happens with the selection process.
But undoubtedly having Ivan Cleary, I mean, look, if he would say they win the comp this year, he's won 3 comps in a row, he hasn't got much else to achieve in the game, you could imagine that would be pretty enticing for him to be part of an Origin setup.
And he's coaching the leading team, and he's got a number of those players in the Origin. It could well be very, very suited to have someone like that as a sounding board, both on selections, both on how they view their team, how they value the performances, how they look at recruitment, how they look at selection or different players to do different roles. And clubs in club coaching, you know, the players that think are stars of the game, all right, and they're constantly writing them up and they're doing the flashy things and scoring the tries and all that sort of thing. For every one of those, there are 16 other coaches out there targeting him in next week's game because he's got a weakness in defence or he's got a weakness with this or he's got a weakness with that. So what people see is amazing talent. And sometimes when you get into Origin, you're targeting people that they wouldn't believe you're targeting. No, I would never talk openly about it, but...
Well, I can give you an example of that. Munster made 34 tackles on Wednesday night. I don't think he'd made 34 combined in the 2 games before.
If you can make 134, even better. But it's kind of like... there needs to be some real reality and there needs to be some honesty about that. And that's the inner sanctum of NRL coaching, week in, week out, that sometimes, you know, the fella that's not involved in that environment loses touch with. You lose touch with it. And you've got to be constantly on the case with that the whole time. So having a current or very recent NRL coach who's actually involved with the club and listening to, you know, the coaches in how they rate players, target players, or different things that are working for the game under the current rules, under the 6 again rule, under the high tackle rule, under all the different things that are in the game. What are the latest changes? What are the latest trends? What are they thinking about? You know, and what happened was Cody Walker came in for game 3 and just totally took over his left side and said, "This is how I want to run it."
Yeah.
Right, and the coaches can sit back and listen to that, and they can go from there, and that's how he orchestrated that. Cody Walker doesn't need coaching at 33 years of age. He just needs the ability to feel wanted, to feel important, and run his own game.
Well, this is the Mal Meninga setup when he was in Queensland.
And he had all that. He had Michael Hagans and Neil Henrys and all those sort of blokes that were doing the nuts and bolts coaching, and Mal gave it profile. He gave it aura. He gave it Queensland.
That's right.
He gave it Queensland.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the legends of the game. And Brad Fittler, when he retired, was a New South Wales longest-serving player. Served most games as captain. He's now had 18 games as coach. He has 49 appearances for New South Wales, and the attacks and everything from the media is nothing short of childish rubbish, agenda-driven, childish rubbish.
Well, it's highly disrespectful.
And no Queensland media would ever do that to a Queensland legend. our legends are not treated by the media here in New South Wales anywhere near well enough. Our New South Wales team is not treated by the media here anywhere near enough, because it's a bigger story for the New South Wales media, certain sections of the New South Wales media, that New South Wales lose, unless they've got their chosen people running the program, which is what the agenda's about. Brad Fittler's won 3 Origin series. How many coaches have done that? You can count them on one hand. He's the best man for the job. He's the best profile for New South Wales. He's the one that pulls the state together. But over a period of time, you can just make some subtle changes to the advice and to the people and in around the centre. And that's not anything against the other people that he's got there at the moment, but unless you're doing this day in, day out, and I keep saying, to be a club coach helps you in that Origin environment. You need people there that are doing that are experiencing it on a day-to-day basis, and that helps. That's one of the factors. It might only be 1%, but they're the little 1% things that are important. So, you know, I'm quite sure Billy Slater wouldn't be averse to bringing Craig Bellamy and asking his opinion on things.
Well, why wouldn't he?
Why wouldn't he? And he's got Cameron Smith. You know, I mean, you know, I think what New South Wales.
They've got Josh Hannay in there. He's an assistant coach at NRL level.
Yeah. So it's, you know, you're looking for every little edge you can get, you know, in what you're doing. And I think Brad Fittler is easily the right man for the job. In fact, Brad Fittler is the only man for the job at the moment. He's the only man for the job. Not the right man, he's the only man for the job. Now, whether he wants to go and grab an Ivan Cleary or a Ricky Stewart or
get them both.
Get them both and bring them in, because they'd gladly do it.
100%.
They'd support the cause.
Gee,
and that's the sort of environment you want to engender. And Brad's gone out and got people from all different areas. You know, your Paul Sirenans, and they're all part of it. You know, Danny Baderis and Andrew Ryan and Mark O'Mealy are coaching the under-19s, and they're part of the Pathways programs, and they played for New South Wales. He wants to bring everybody in, but you've still got to have that connection with the current day. And you know, and if that's what Ivan's role was this week, well, then all power to Freddy for doing it, because that's what he needed. So it's. And their little things you can improve. But don't tell me it wasn't a great series. Don't tell me it wasn't wonderfully promoted. But don't tell me it hasn't been good for the game. You know, and it's been marvellous. And you know, look at what was achieved in Game 3 as a precursor to coming in next year. All of a sudden, you feel like you're back in the fight. And you know, Kalama Tungi and Braden Best and Cody Walker, they're looking forward to next year's series. And there'll be some young blokes out there wanting to do it too.
Start talking about Origin soon. Origin 2024.
That's it. We're done with Origin.
Are we done?
There's no more.
What about under-19s Origin?
Yeah,
I'll throw that at you. So Queensland scored 16 points in the second half of the women's game to win 20-14. So even at women's under-19 level, they can still come back.
Yeah. They're actually expected to win easily.
Were they?
Yeah. Well, my judges of women's rugby league were telling me that he thought Queensland would win comfortably, but New South Wales were very brave in the first half. They conceded the first try and then played a really good back end of the first half, scored, led comfortably at half time, but Queensland were too strong in the end. Yeah, that was too good.
And I missed the women's game. I was out and about doing some stuff with the kids on school holidays, believe it or not, and I watched the under-19s men's game. Now, 32-14, goodness me, there's some talent in that New South Wales side. Ethan Strange, man of the match. What a gun. What about the name Ethan? It's an Ethan-a-thon.
There was 3
Ethan
Ethans.
Saunders, the halfback from Parramatta, played good.
Yeah.
And, geez, I like Ethan Ferguson on the wing.
Ferguson, yeah.
He's Latrell's cousin.
Latrell's cousin, he comes from Taree. He's played in the junior reps with Newcastle, and he's just signed up to go to South Sydney, where Latrell is, obviously.
And then Will Sullivan, who played in the back row for Queensland, big strapping
from
forward.
Townsville, yeah, nice big strong boy.
How do you, the question I wanted to ask you, everyone watching that game could go, geez, these blokes look like they're good. How do you, as a coach or coaching staff, how do you know when the time's right to play these guys at NRL level?
Well, they're playing in their age group for a start, all right? And the test of development, you know, bringing people through pathways, and, you know, this is my favourite subject, and I've been doing it a long time. The test comes in playing open age against men. That's the test. You know, physically, mentally, you know, there's a lot of factors that go into that. It's when they play against men. And a number of those players who played in that under-19s game last night have been playing open age football in Queensland Cup and New South Wales Cup. Some of them have already experienced it, and Samuela Fainu has already played a couple of games for Manly. I don't think if you've played NRL you should be playing in those state under-19s games, but they choose to do it anyway. New South Wales were strong. Out of last year's under-19s game, and remember these players are part of that generation that missed a couple of years of rugby league through COVID. So their development is a little inhibited at this point in their career now than what it would have normally been.
Paul Alamotti played in that game last year.
Paul Alamotti played. Well, there were actually 9 New South Wales players who played in the under-19s last year that have played NRL this year.
9?
9.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I think there was only a couple from Queensland, but New South Wales were quite dominant. And New South Wales won again. And some of those will get an NRL game before the end of the year, and certainly a lot of them will debut next season. But as for being regular NRL players, one thing to make the NRL, the other one is to win with them. You know, they're still some years away and some time away before that. But you can go back and look at them years. If you go back and look at the Origin team, I said this in the broadcast last night, the Origin team that played Wednesday night, the 2 teams, 9 of the New South Wales players and 14 of the Queensland players played for their state in junior representative football at that level, under 19s, under 20s, under 18s, whatever it was. You know, it's a pretty good guide to players of the future when they're playing at this pointy end of the pathways. And there are some that get to this level and that's about as good as they're going to get. They've got to take the next step and play against men, and then depending which club they're with and what development program they're with and what environment they're in and how they handle it, how they handle exposure, money, media, fans, all the other temptations that come with
Well, they've
life.
got the talent, there's no doubt, watching that game last night. And,
Yeah,
great to showcase them on prime time here on 9.
It was brilliant, yeah, and great for the boys, but, you know, don't wrap them too highly. They've still got a ways to go yet.
Before we, I ask you a little trivia question, we'll have a look at round 20. I wanted to mention this. Thank you to everyone that watched Origin here on 9's Wide World of Sports. Game 1, highest rating television show in the country this year, 3,417,000. Game 2, second highest television show watched around Australia, 3,182,000. And Game 3, obviously the series is decided, but 2,631,000 people watched Origin around Australia. The
Brilliant.
top 3 rated television shows in the country anywhere in 2023.
Yeah.
So the ratings were fantastic, contrary to what you might read elsewhere.
Are you saying that because of that Muppet that writes in the
No,
paper?
I'm just saying that it'd be nice that people actually know
Don't go
that
worrying about Muppets.
it rated its
Don't
you know
get
what's
upset
off.
with
I'm not
Muppets.
upset. I'm just relaying the facts.
Look at
about
all the people that
ratings.
work so hard here and the great product that they produce and everything like that.
They do a great job. All of our team here. I'm very proud to be part of a wonderful team.
100%. I've said this openly, and I've said this ever. I've been involved in team sports all my life, all right? As a player, as a coach, as an administrator, and whatever. I've been involved in team sports. I understand the team ethos as good as anyone on the planet about the importance of roles of a team and that sort of thing. And I say people openly, the team here at Channel 9 is the best team that I've ever been involved with, in anything. The people here, their talent, their work ethic, the relationships, and everything that goes with this organisation is the best team that I've ever been involved with, and it really is. And for people to take cheap shots and have criticism just because they don't like an individual or they're running some sort of campaign or just because they're generally a muppet, affects so many people here who don't deserve that sort of criticism, nor do their families or anyone else. But, you know, karma's a funny thing, and it will come. Trust me. Don't be worrying about it.
I'm not worried about it.
Good.
I just wanted to let everyone know about the ratings, because it was a great success for us here. 6 tackles trivia. Rueben Cotter scored a double on debut for the Blues on Wednesday night. Before him, who was the last Blues player to score a double on debut? I mentioned it in the call. I'll see whether you're listening. A break here. We'll have a look at round 20 on the other side. A double for Rueben Cotter on Origin debut. Gus, who was the Blues player to have
So
done that
I didn't
before?
hear the commentary.
Oh, thanks.
Well, no, I'm on the sideline then. I've got the earpiece in my ear, but
You can hear everything else.
I wanted to watch the game. I wanted to watch the game without listening to the commentary. I wanted to watch the game, so I took my earpiece out. So I haven't heard what you said.
Good.
Bradman Best scored a double on debut for the Blues Wednesday night. Before him, who was the last Blues player to score a double on debut?
He played in the game.
Oh, he played in the game.
Yep.
Josh Adokar.
Oh, the other one.
Brian Toto.
Correct.
Okay.
Geez, Brian Toto. My goodness, didn't he have a game?
He's a beast.
Oh.
You know, when he was a young fella, he was I think he was playing under 16s or something, and it was when we used to have talented kids coming through, I'd say to player managers, he hasn't got a manager, he hasn't got a manager, you should manage him, you should manage them, you know. And we'd give them to friendly managers because we knew they'd never move your players. There were some managers that would just pick them up like flowers in the wild and take them to market and run them off everywhere else. So I used to like to place our best kids with good managers, ones we had a really good relationship with. And the manager looked at him, he said, he's too small. I won't say the manager's name. He said, he's too small. I said,
please.
No. I said, please. I said, just take him. I said, he's really good. He's too small.
He ain't too small.
Eh?
He just kept going and going and going.
It's not the size of the dog in the fight, mate. It's the size of the fight in the dog.
Before, I was going to talk about Payne Haas, but you know what? It's been so good talking about Origin and getting all your great insight that I can't be bothered. Payne Haas will go where he wants to, and whoever wants to pay him about $1 million a year. Before we preview round 20, I would like to congratulate and acknowledge my dear friend and colleague David Morrow, who last weekend
Hall of Fame.
became the 28th man to be inducted into the SCG Media Hall of Fame.
Brilliant.
He has his photo and plaque on the wall there. They went out for lunch to celebrate yesterday. I couldn't join the guys from the continuous school because I was doing parental things.
He get lunch for Australia.
He's a great luncher, my man.
He's the best luncher.
He's a great luncher. We have to have a lunch with him soon.
I don't think I could go the pace.
He's sort of...
I used to be able to go for long lunches. I can't handle long lunches anymore.
Yeah, you got a couple more left in you yet.
You reckon?
We salute you, David Morrow.
Well done,
congratulations. Now,
Congratulations,
I mean,
Dave.
he spent over 35 years doing cricket at the SCG. Take all the other sports out of there.
Right.
So he thoroughly deserves it.
His famous try, was it the Meninga try he called in the Test match over there?
Yeah.
In the.
Here it comes now to Lindner. We're well into injury time. 40 seconds, in fact. As it comes away to Stewart again. Stewart throws the dummy. Now Ricky Stewart's on his own. He's up to the halfway. He's waiting for Eddinghausen. He's got support. Eddinghausen's with him. They can go to Meninga. And Meninga tries. Meninga scores. Oh, what a try. What a try. What a right from Stewart. And what a try. Meninga.
What a great call that was.
Good on you, Thirsty.
Yeah.
We'll send this to him and he'll be thrilled. Round 20, our preview. Thanks to Bluebet. What are you really gambling with? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au. Friday night footy tonight. Newcastle versus the West Tigers. They've got Api Coruscant back. The Tigers, who were far more competitive last week.
I went over to the dressing room, the Origin dressing room, to interview Brad Fittler before kickoff. And in there was Api Coruscant, Nathan Cleary, Nico Hines.
Yeah, it was great.
Tom Trbojevic.
Hudson Young.
Junior Bolo. So everyone that had taken part in the series, Brad Fittler had them in the dressing room. Right? And even staff and all those sort of things. It's a really connected, tight unit, what they create there. The environment that they create there is very, very special. And people trying to drive a wedge between people is just childish, so childish. But when you actually see the inner sanctum and what it means to them, all that sort of thing, he's the man for the job, Brad. Anyway.
So Knights $1.28.
Yep.
West Tigers $3.70. I was looking at that West Tigers team. Now, they get Coruscant back. But if they had Luke Brooks in, I'd reckon they're a red-hot chance. They've got a reasonable side on the park tonight, although Kalen Ponga plays his 100th game for Newcastle.
Yep.
Up there.
I think it's a lot closer than people will think. Knights are coming off the bye, and before that they had a training gallop. They won by 60 points over the Bulldogs. I don't know that it's great preparation for the desperation the Tigers might give there, but it is at home. Look, I think Knights will probably prevail, but I think the Tigers will give a really good account of themselves again.
Back to Belmore for Canterbury, Saturday, 3 o'clock.
Sell out.
How good?
You can't fit them all in at Belmore.
Fantastic.
Can't fit them all in. Nowhere to sit them, nowhere to feed them.
Mate, the reserve grade's going to be a sellout too.
There's nowhere to park them, but they don't care.
There's never has been anywhere to park them.
They all want to be at Belmore. They love Belmore. And Josh Reynolds, of course, is playing his last game for the club. Josh is going to retire after his performance in reserve grade this weekend. He'll lead the team out on the weekend. He'll have his junior league club there with a guard of honour, and we'll make it a nice day for him. And
Good
people
stuff.
will come along because of Josh Reynolds. But it's a sellout. And hopefully the Bulldogs can do them proud.
$1.45 Brisbane, $2.75 Canterbury, $5.30 Four Pines Brookvale. I'm off there for the radio Saturday. Hope it's a beautiful winter's afternoon over at Manly.
It will be.
A bit sprinkling of money for Manly. $2.26. North Queensland, $1.62. What have we got here for teams? Well, I'm assuming the Cowboys they're all going to back up. I've heard nothing to the contrary.
They can't afford not to back up, mate. They're walking the tightrope. And when I make statements like
they're going to win the comp,
they can win the comp. They can. I don't say they will, but they can. When I make statements like that, I knowing full well that these are the type of moments that they need to get right. They don't have the luxury of being able to do it. They've got to walk a tightrope.
Do you know how good they're going? They've got Jason Taumalolo on the bench.
Yeah, and it's a strong-looking team. It's a serious-looking team. I'm going to tip Cowboys because I think these are the ones they've got to nail. They've got to make sure they win these ones. It won't be whether or not they can beat Panthers or those top 3 or 4 teams. It'll be to make sure that they keep winning these games against those that might be competing for a top 8 spot. They need to win this one,
Mate,
and I think they will.
This is a bloody good game. I mean, I know Turbo's not there, but Garrick's at fullback. Schuster's there. Cherry Evans. Paseka.
Yep.
Ola Kawatu. Jake Trebojevic. Aaron Woods.
Yep.
Ethan Bullimore. Josh Aloye. They're 2 very, very strong outfits.
Yeah, they are.
Super game. 7:35. I can tell you some breaking news. James Tedesco is being rested and won't be playing for the Roosters against the Melbourne Storm. Which is reflected in actually it's not reflected in the betting. The Roosters are into $2.50. I don't know if there's any doubt around any Melbourne guys backing up. Maybe Munster might not play.
Will Joseph Manu go to fullback?
Yes. That's what they're saying.
So,
Which will bring Hutchison in probably.
Or Suoli to centre and maybe Corey Allen back to the wing or vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Brandon Smith's on the bench. It's his first game back.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting because Melbourne can be good, but they can also put in a wobbly one. We're assuming Munster plays, I guess. Harry Grant plays. Where's this being played at?
SCG.
No, I'm going to go Melbourne.
Okay. Sunday. Gee, we've got some good games this weekend. Warriors at home to Cronulla.
Yeah.
$1.95 Warriors, $1.85 Sharks. Now, just bear in mind, the Sharks have got to start beating some top 8 teams. They've beaten 1 all year.
Yeah.
And they're heading over to New Zealand to take on the Warriors, who really, they flogged Parramatta, and they should have, given who was out for the Eels last week. They've got Mitch Barnett's gone to the front row. Josh Curran's back in the second row. And who have we got missing? Oh, the Haystacks Calhoun. He's on the bench for the Sharkies. Look, they're both very strong.
During my very short time being associated with the Warriors, and I used to drive up to Wyong every couple of mornings a week to watch them train. They were in camp up there, and 2 of the players that I really took a liking to were front rower Aden Fanua-Blake and the lock forward and captain Tohu Harris, who are 2 outstanding men and outstanding footballers. And they're probably not getting the raps that they deserve for what the Warriors are doing this year. They've been outstanding, and the Sharks are going to have to contend with these 2 big boys because if they're able to dominate where they've been dominating, then Sean Johnson is just running amok with them. This is a real test for the Sharks. And this could give us a real indication as to whether or not the Sharks are going to be any better at finals time this year than they were last year.
They have to win this, Cronulla. Like, this is the sort of game they've got to make a statement now.
Well, they don't have to win it, but what they do is not lose it for the same reasons that they generally lose games. It's one for them that they need to nail. I don't think they will. I think the Warrior will get them.
All right, Sunday footy here on 9, 4 o'clock kickoff at Dolphin Oval. Played the Origins there last night.
Yeah.
And the Dolphins are at home to the Panthers. Now, Panthers are $1.15. Dolphins are $5.50. I see Nathan Cleary's named in number 24. I can't imagine they're going to rush him back, are they?
Well, why name him? Every time he's been named in number 24, he's played. Whenever they've named him at number 24, he's played. Why would they bother naming him if he wasn't going to play?
Yeah. Would you not give him the week? Would you not give him an extra week?
Then why name him?
Well, I know.
I'm just saying, history shows, it doesn't matter, not just Nathan Cleary, but players these top 9 players, when they come back from injury, if they name them on the extended bench, right?
Well, why bother?
They generally play. That's Liam Martins and these sort of players. So
Maybe they've named him in case they wanted to rest some of the Origin blokes.
Well, I don't think they would play him if they're going to rest the Origin blokes. I don't think they'd play him in a weakened team. They just let the other fellas go around the way they have because they've been causing people trouble anyway. I think from that perspective, I think Panthers will be too good. But all interest will be as to whether or not Cleary plays and whether the Origin players backed up. Ivan Cleary said last week he wasn't going to be backing Origin players up, or he thought that was an outdated sort of philosophy. And he's got the talent not to have to. He's got the production line not to have to. I think either way they'll probably win the game anyway. So, but
Gee, Dolphins aren't a $5.50 shot, are they?
No, I don't think so either. But they've still got to win.
Yeah, true. Or you could lead by 6 points at half time with Lupet.
That happens.
Sunday, 6:15. I love Sunday night footy. You think it's all... Yeah, because you finish your game and you think, oh, we're done. But, oh, no, there's still one more to go.
I can never get home in time for it. I've got to watch it on replay.
Eels $1.34 with everyone back against the very dangerous Gold Coast Titans with Tino and Fafita in.
Wait on.
back.
Wait on.
What? $1.34.
When you say around the Clintons, let's see, Will Penasini, Sadie Simons, Sean Russell.
So
Dejan
Mitchell
Arsene.
Moses is in.
Yeah,
Campbell Gillard's in. Polo's there.
Yeah, Campbell Gillard's just played an Origin.
Yeah.
Sean Lane, Bryce Cartwright, Jermaine Hopgood. They can win the Titans. Don't worry about that. They can win. Fafita, you want him to back up. You want Fatawaker to back up. You want Tino to back up. I suppose they've played the Origin game. Oh, dear. Moses. He was very good, Mitchell Moses, the other night, wasn't he?
He did play good.
Shows you when you get a few under your belt. Here he comes. AJ Brimson. Crikey, it's a good team, the Titans, isn't it? Look at it. AJ Brimson. Kieran Foran. Mo Fatawaker. Tino Fasuamala-Awi. David Fafita.
Welcome to 60 minutes.
Oh, I'm going to go Eel.
Oh, all that for nothing.
It's a good side, the Titans side.
All right.
Good side, the Titans side.
There's our... Go through your tips.
My tips are... let me get my page back here so I know who I'm talking about. I went Knight, Bulldog, Cowboy, Storm, Warrior, Panther, Eel.
I'm getting the feeling if there's an upset, you think it's going to be the Gold Coast.
Gold Coast can beat anyone. Gold Coast can beat anyone.
Gold Coast can win
I actually had a great night out the other night. Cameron Serraldo and I took Justin Holbrook for a bit of dinner.
Was it a secret dinner?
No.
It's in the paper.
No. They're mates.
Fair dinkum. Anything you do ends up in the paper. Phil Gould took the rubbish out last night.
Yeah, how they explain it, or what the meeting was for. I mean, I coached Justin Holbrook. We've all known him. When he got the sack, we rang him up and said, "If you're ever in Sydney, come and have some dinner." Everything's got to have an ulterior motive. Everything's got to. They read so much. I mean, one bloke's embarrassed himself in the last week with the stuff that he's gone on, but we'll deal with that at another time. But it's and Justin was talking about the Gold Coast and a lot of the talent they got up there, and they got some more coming, and how the team's really starting to mature. And he's disappointed obviously that he couldn't go forward with it. But
so you've signed him as an assistant coach for next year?
Everything's got an ulterior motive, doesn't it? Yeah, it was just a catch-up. I think it was Cameron that called him first. Cameron knew him and just rang to say, Kuizare, if you're ever in Sydney, let us know when you're around. We'll have a bit of dinner. So
do you know what I find funny?
He's living at Carring Bar.
Right.
Serraldo lives at Carring Bar. I live at Yowie Bay. We all live 5 minutes from each other, so we went and had some dinner.
Right.
So, of course, it's I suppose the timing was...
I do find it funny, though. I mean, you do run a rugby league club, and you are going to have meetings with people and potentially sign them.
All day.
It's not really a secret.
All day, every day. I should start... You know what I should do? I should start working for the... writing for the newspaper, critiquing cafes. Oh. Coffees and cakes and...
And you get everything for free then, too.
Eh?
You get everything for free.
I don't want it for free, but I'm just saying that I've been in that many coffee shops. When I was at Panthers, obviously we were a long way out there. I had my own... We used to try and spread it around in Penrith. We have our own little restaurants and our own little coffee shops where we'd have our meetings. And if anything needed to be private, it was always private. No one ever found out about anything. But I had my little places in the city where I used to be at the Sofitel Wentworth, or there was another little coffee shop I used to do. There was one in the eastern suburbs I used to go to. There was one at Homebush I used to go to. There was one at Brighton I used to go to. There's a couple of places in Cronulla I like to take people. And I've sort of had my little one. And I might sit in a coffee shop for 3 or 4 hours and have 3 or 4 different meetings at the one coffee shop. People come and go.
Does the bloke, person that run to look after you, they give you a table at the back with a screen around it?
No, I don't worry about that. I can never understand why people want to take your photo and send it off to the newspaper. Why?
I don't know.
What do they get out of that?
Well, not if you. I mean, it's not like you're in a compromising position or anything like that. You're in a cafe,
sitting in a cafe talking to a footballer. I mean, who cares? But then what it allows to, oh, he's had coffee with him. Oh, he's had dinner with him. Oh, he's had this and that. 90% of what they write is just absolute rubbish.
So that is our episode of Six Tackers with Gus. I think my most enjoyable one of the year, Gus. Well done.
Do you think so?
Yeah, very, very
How
good
long
stuff.
did it go?
About 4 hours. Yeah. Are you calling tonight? Are we working together tonight?
No.
Oh, you brushed me. Newcastle West Tigers, live and free here on 9, and then Sunday footy at Dolphin Oval, with the Dolphins up against the Panthers. We'll be back to our normal time slot on Wednesday. We will talk to you then.
What are you really gambling with? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.